Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. All right. So homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and sadhu. We're beginning another day of practice. Yeah, practicing together and sitting and walking. Everybody's familiar with this format. It's a time to work on our samatha, our tranquility. We're setting the conditions for internal quiet, calm, and composure, and then working on vipassana. We're going to, just turning the mind down is nice. Yeah, turning the volume down is nice, but also trying to seed the mind with Dhamma themes, with reflections, with things to consider. Because at the end of the day, will we be like, oh yeah, I was with the breath the entire time. That's totally good. Well, yes, you were breathing the entire time. Did you learn anything from the experience? Or was it just a calm day? Yeah. And so the theme that was suggested is emptiness. Yeah. And I just got to say right from the beginning, it's you probably all are. I know I am familiar with emptiness as a major theme in the Mahayana lineage of Buddhism, and even Vajrayana, yeah. But like stories of Zen masters and the Heart Sutra, and you have all of these instances where emptiness is really made much of. This I'm wrong. It's made more of than nibbana. Like there might be the occasional mention of nirvana, but emptiness is really held up in its place. And in some ways, you can say, oh, it's potato, potato, it's tomato, tomato, it's the same thing, yeah? In other ways, I have to acknowledge that I'm not really the right person to speak on emptiness in that context, in the context of the long lineage and progression of teachers that have expanded upon emptiness as a theme in the Mahayana, that have made much of it and used it as a symbol of the goal. Yeah. So, well, I could. I could crack open, Dogen or Hakuen or, the Sixth Patriarch or obviously I'm not well read. I don't know, but that would be a little disingenuous. If you know me, you know that I like many Western Theravada monastics. I do have a lot of esteem for the original teachings, yeah. And no matter how much I might occasionally stray from them, I just circle back around. It's like every time I hear the Pali Canon, the words of the Buddha, I'm like, yes, yeah, that's my flavor. That's what I'm into. And so there's really nowhere to go canonically with the idea of emptiness as it's expanded on in the Mahayana, not from a Pali Canon standpoint. There just aren't. There's nothing for me to reference, and I can't even really give a commentary on the Heart Sutra because it's not a Pali Sutra. So I can't I can't look at the Pali and say, well, this word means this, and this. If you know me, you know that's what I do. I can't even do it with that. So, but emptiness does exist in the Theravada. Yeah, but the way that it exists is twofold. And if you read the reflection I put out on it, you know what those divisions are. Yeah, we have emptiness as a characteristic or a way of investigating phenomena. And we have emptiness as a very deep and sublime meditative abiding. And now that second, aspect, that deep, sublime meditative abiding, is not included in sama samadhi, is not included in what we call the Opanayiko Dhammo. So the Dhamma, Opanayiko, is this interesting word which means progressive. It's like stairs on a step, or stones on a path. Yeah, it it means that one thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing in a linear manner. And the attainment of emptiness is not on this normal progression of meditation. That's not to say you can't use the deep meditative abiding in emptiness as a basis for insight. The Buddha absolutely talks about it in that way. But it would be, you get to that attainment, and it's a very sublime attainment. It's, you could say, it's a formless attainment. Yeah, it comes after you've mastered the form jhanas. Yeah, because you have to be able to kind of deconstruct the mind. Yeah, which has no form. You have to be beyond thinking about form for it to even work. Um, but you get to this attainment, and then you come out of it, and you investigate. Wait, if that was possible, what does that mean about the structure of my mind? Is my mind permanent? No, I just saw it cease. Is it me? No, I just saw it cease. So if parts of me are ceasing, then they're obviously not parts of me, right? You get to investigate that way. But it doesn't concretely lead to what the Buddha was pointing to with Samadhi, is this linear progression that leads to the cessation of consciousness, which is an attainment which does bring about non-returning. It brings about serious, near full enlightenment. And so when the Buddha is talking about Samadhi, he's encouraging you to take that progressive path. And emptiness was something that the arahants were attaining to um, on the side, yeah, because it doesn't necessarily progressively lead there, but nevertheless it exists, and it's sublime. And the Buddha and Venerable Sariputta, they were abiding in emptiness. So there's obviously something attractive there, something peaceful, something sublime, and I think that's why I was asked to speak on it, even though I'm not the best source, is because it is attractive, right? And it's, in one way, just knowing natural principles and the way that society works, you know why emptiness became a buzzword, right? Because in the Buddhist time, everybody was practicing tapas. They were trying to build an inner spiritual fire, and they were sitting in these heated rooms, and they were doing battle with nagas, with these dragons, and psychic powers that would raise them up like hot air balloons. And they were really into that. And then the Buddha came along, and in the hot, sweltering, dry Ganges River Valley, he was saying, no, no, we want to nibbana. We want to become cool. And people were like, yes, yes, this is exactly what we want. We want to become cool. But it's kind of obvious that when the teaching moved out of the sweltering equatorial Ganges River Valley, that it was slightly less appealing. Yeah, it was slightly less refreshing. People weren't, in the Himalayas, people were not necessarily like, I need to become cool. They were like, no, can we talk about the warm Dhamma, the 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 woolly, fuzzy, soft, nurturing Dhamma? Yeah, that would be better. And so as the Buddhist teaching have moved into different cultures, it allows the drawing in of new ideas and the reframing of these teachings in ways that make sense to people. And so emptiness just really made sense as the teaching moved north and moved east. And I think in the modern day, when we look at our lives, emptiness really makes sense, right? I think as Westerners, and I can guarantee that you're all in front of a computer or a phone, so yes, you're experiencing the same thing that I've seen in myself, is our lives feel full. They feel cluttered. They feel just it's what when we hear about dukkha, we're like, yes, I have dukkha. And even before we really get the definition, it's like it just the onomatopoeia, the sound aspect of that word. It's like, yes, there's that is it's dukkha, 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 everything. Dukkha, 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 all these machines, dukkha, 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 and all of these notifications, dukkha, 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 dukkha. Everything's just dukkhaing all over the place. Yeah. And it seems like just so much is going on. And so we get introduced to meditation. And one of the first instinctive impulses we have is like, I need to have less going on. We begin to cultivate mindfulness and we're like, wow, I'm crazy. My mind just won't shut up. And that's, I think, it's something we all experience, yeah? And it's one of our luxuries in the modern world is that we do have access to so many interesting ideas, sights, sounds, smells, flavors, and sensations. Yeah, things that have never existed in history before. And it's most of the time we're pretty on board. Yeah, we like having flavorful food. We like, these moving picture shows. We like hearing, provocative little jingles that stick with us the whole day until we don't, until we can't get rid of them. Yeah. And so the idea and the attraction to emptiness is maybe a symptom of what we're seeking. Yeah. We're recognizing there are a lot of things going on. There is a lot um, kind of rattling around internally. And we want to know how there could be less. As we might not have yet a concept of what emptiness is. Like, what is it like when there isn't anything? Yeah. I don't necessarily find it always useful to be questioning that. The Buddha, he gives a framework for what kind of thoughts produce doubt. And this is one of these things, is like, just contemplating the nature is like, does this exist, does this not exist, does this both exist and not exist? I, and those kind of thoughts, it's hard to find a firm footing. Yeah. So rather than looking for an attainment or an abiding or something to point to and say that is emptiness, that is our goal, I think probably the starting point is to do what we do in the Theravadas, to start from the Four Noble Truths and acknowledge there is fullness. Yeah? There is clutter. And once we've acknowledged that and understood that, then we can start to see how it ceases. We can start to see how it's not permanent, how it's not stable, how it's put onto things by our minds. Yeah? And that means we can stop doing that. As we start to do that, what we find is there's space. Yeah. So maybe when we first sit down, we're told, pay attention to the breath. And if we're very anxious, yeah, it feels like every muscle in our body is tense, right? And we can hardly sit. And it almost feels like there's no room to breathe, right? Because everything's just kind of like holding on. But once we start to calm down a bit, and we get ourselves, destimulated, and we relax, we find that the breath becomes quite natural. There's space. I think it's the same way with our mind and relating to emptiness, is we don't have to have a concept of emptiness as we begin. Instead, have concept that there's a lot going on, yeah. And so let's figure out how that's happening. Let's really acknowledge that, and then naturally there'll be this space where before there was something that we were filling our mind with, that we were compulsively holding onto and carrying with us. When that drops away, we see that, oh yeah, there's room to pick up something else. And then even without really understanding emptiness, we're like, well, that could not have happened unless I had made that space, which means that there was space there. I might not understand space. I might not be able to perceive the emptiness, but it was there. I could not have thought a new thought or had a new feeling or appreciated something in a new way unless if I hadn't let go of the way I was already thinking of it, the way I was already perceiving it. And this should bring up a sense of why this is so useful, why this is so attractive. Because we are impermanent and we do like to flow with things. We do like to be open-minded, be open to things as they are. We have to kind of clean out all of our assumptions and expectations and misperceptions of things. So the Zen story, I think it's become so ubiquitous. I don't even think Zen can really claim it anymore. But a scholar goes to visit the Zen master, and the Zen master, oh yes, 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 come in, come in, come in. Let me make you some tea. And the scholar says, oh, thank you. Yes, please, I'd love some tea. And the Zen master, starts filling up the pot, and the scholar says, please speak to me on Dhamma. This was something they did back in the day. They just like, monk, speak on the Dhamma. This will please me. And the Zen master's just like, oh, yeah, the Dhamma. Yeah, but let's have tea first. And he starts to pour some tea for the scholar, yeah, in the teacup. And he just keeps pouring and pouring, and the level goes up and up and up, and it reaches the rim of the teacup and then starts spilling over. And the scholar's just watching this, and he's like, so okay, this is your house. Obviously, you do you, but hey, it's too full. It's too full. You can't fit anything else in there. And the Zen master like looks at him and he's like, yes, yes, you are too full. There's no room for anything else. So how could I speak on the Dhamma and how could you understand? Yeah. So I think this morning we are like the scholar. Yeah. We've come and we have many notions, we have many perceptions, we have many ideas about practice. And if we're going to really give this theme a try, and then do a little bit of investigation of emptiness, we can't just fire off on all cylinders with philosophy and method and progression and all of these things. First let's try to empty our cup. Yeah, let's try and create some space, and maybe through the course of the day we'll start to see this process. And this is the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, we can't see emptiness, but we can realize it's there, right? So first we have to realize what is filling us up, and we have to see its impermanence. We have to see how we don't hold on to it, how we don't keep it there. So we'll about to begin just some meditation period, sitting and walking as you feel called to, as you feel appropriate. And during this time, I encourage, usually I'm not always encouraging, this sort of open-minded, discursive uh, way of meditating, to not take an object. Usually, I find that my mind works well when it's applied to something. Yeah. But in this space and with this theme, what you might drop in to your normal meditation, whether you're doing metta and you're thinking of people or phrases or ideas, or you're doing a body contemplation, or you're paying attention to the breath, is to start to drop in this idea of maybe there's nothing there really. Yeah. And be willing to whatever you perceive, whatever you look for, be willing to drop in this notion of, well, maybe I'm putting that there. Maybe that doesn't actually, maybe it's not actually there. Yeah. And I think many people can kind of intuit how this can be the case. Yeah. Anybody who's tried to do some breath meditation and has begun to develop a little bit of bodily awareness It's not just me, is it? It's like you begin to feel stuff in your body, like lumpiness, like stagnation, like heavy sensations, like coarse sensations, like masses, yeah. And I think this is, it's not that there are, it's not that there's some energetic body and it has these orbs of floating material. It's like it's our mind that's doing it, but it's a symptom of clinging. We have some idea or notion or perception that is stuck, and that is informing a tension within the body, and in a vicious kind of way, kind of reinforcing itself. We sense the tension in the body, and so we say, oh, that's stable, that's not going anywhere. I don't know what to do with this, right? So even at the basic level of being aware of our body, beginning to drop in this notion of maybe that doesn't need to be there. Yeah, we have this tension in our shoulder, and we have this long-standing story that this is from that injury I got way back when, and it's tight and it's knotted and it's scarred, and it's always going to be there, and it hurts, and it throws off my meditation. And really, does that need to be there? Yeah, how much of that can we deconstruct? How much of that is just filling up the space? And I can say, just to get to the basic experience of having a shoulder, but first we have to really recognize, well, what is not the experience of having a shoulder, yeah? Like emptying out all of these ideas of what a shoulder is. And if you reach a point where, well, okay, I can't really say where my shoulder begins or ends, but I'm aware that there's some sensation over there. Good. Yeah? That's what it should kind of feel like. It should be like there is a shoulder. I can feel it. It's there, yeah? But the definitions are kind of falling away. The real, like, it is this, I'm so sure of it, kind of falls away. And it's into that space that we might start to have, actual perceptions of the shoulder. Uh, we might we might find that is oddly pleasant, and we might find that we get attached to how oddly pleasant that is, and we try to make it more pleasant, and so we try to abide in piti and sukha and have it, flow through our body, and then we get caught on another idea, and so to empty that out, the shoulder is not inherently pleasant either. It's not filled with piti and sukha. Like, do we want it to be filled with piti and sukha? We so quickly we empty it out, and we want it to be filled with something else. Or can we just let it kind of clean out, let it kind of clear out, as though we're kind of pouring cool water through the body, or cool water through the breath, or cool water through our interpersonal relationships, yeah? And rather than trying to objectify them or fill them up or get them to conform to a particular idea, saying, well, maybe just less ideas would be better. Maybe just less expectations. Maybe like once this is cleaned out, I can just see what it's actually like. And maybe that'll be okay. So I offer that to you, and you can take it or leave it. It's an opportunity. I find when I set aside a day for these practices, I like to have something that I can think about, because we're not always just like breath, 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 right? We're not always just laser focused on an object. So the mind likes to breathe in and out. It likes to kind of have some time to make connections, and to go out into the world, and to, like with a child with blocks, try to make things. So to take these ideas and to try to make your own understanding out of it. Yeah. What are we full of? And what is it like when, no matter what I'm finding is in that space, I say, does it have to be there? Can I let it go? Could we really not have that there and still be conscious, still be alive? Yeah. Is that necessary? Is that absolutely necessary? And then if we hear some voice that says yes, going, really? And just seeing, yeah. And again, we might not, don't look for an endpoint. Don't do this emptying out for a couple of minutes, maybe an hour, and then go on a walk and I'm like, I'm empty. I'm empty of all things. It's just like, well, there's still that voice saying, I'm empty, eureka. So there's something still in there, right? Let's not try to get to some place where there's nothing in there quite yet, right? Let's just see what arises and then like, okay, yeah, that's nice, but you don't have to be there. We don't have to get rid of you, but we also don't have to hold on to you and just kind of let things flow through and flow out and see where we're at after a little while of giving ourselves that opportunity. Okay. So we can begin our sitting and walking practice. And we'll keep going until 11. Yeah. And there will be a bell at 11.